Welcome, dear friends, to Cardiac Radio and another program, Inner Journey with Paul and Stephen. We are in chapter 9, part 2. Saul of Tarsus was self centered, narcissistic, arrogant, and he became Christian. Last week, we were talking about when we are convinced but not converted. We know of things, but we don't apply in our daily lives. Today, with chapter 9, The Prisoner of Christ, we're going to learn how we become so coherent that we become this moral authority and easily people will also embrace it. In chapter 9, we're going to see the traveling from Jerusalem to Rome. If you go to the internet and you Google Paul's voyage to Rome, you're going to see that he traveled from Jerusalem all the way to Italy in Rome. How long did it take? It took him 24 days to do that trip. And it took him 1,810 miles to actually achieve it. And let's not forget that he spent 3 months. We're talking about 20 days straight, 24 days straight, but we're talking about 3 months that he had to wait in Malta, the country that we know nowadays, then the island, simply the island, because of shipwreck, right? So what do we learn in this chapter? Every single paragraph is a learning experience. So we're going to see that he became a reference for the guard, the centurion Julius. He became a moral influence over others in the ship. His speech vibrated. This is how Emmanuel describes how Paul of Tarsus turned out to be this powerhouse of the Christ. Of course, you know he's not alone. We're never alone when we do the good. Did you know that? And do you remember when he created a plot against the Christ? When he persecuted Christians? And yet, he turned it all around. So you and I are learning here about how our true repentance leads us to reparation. Paul of Tarsus is already changing everyone around. When we speak, that's lesson number 1. We emanate magnetism through our voice. Our ectoplasm is shaped up in the form of what we speak. So he felt the loving presence of the Master. He felt Jesus' kindness, and to everyone, he would teach not about a distant Master, but one that is so close to us, that loves us so dearly, inviting us to the same transformation. What about you? Do you feel this presence? The presence of the Master in your life? If you think of the Christ, how do you see him? Do you see him seated, standing, speaking, quiet, judging, compassionate? How do you see? It's important because the closer we get to the Christ, the more our lives will be transformed. Paul of Tarsus, through his intuition, Throughout the trip, then he realized there was going to be a problem. So he allows this Julius, the friend, the guard, the centurion, to know that they should probably avoid the storm that was coming by. And did you believe it? There was a hurricane. Recently, we in the United States, we were all shaken up by the presence of Hurricane Milton. Back then, we didn't have the forecast to prepare us, but we had the mediumistic forecast of Paul of Tarsus. But the captain didn't believe it, so he didn't do much. And even worse, 2 days after his warning, the day got better. And then people are like, oh, he's just a criminal. He wants to fool everybody around. He wants to escape. It's a plot to escape. And then the storm came. Everything they had was gone. They had more than 200 people in the ship. They were all shipwrecked. They survived, thank God, and stayed in Malta for a while. And there, we're going to find a very interesting occurrence because he's helping people understand that this is just a passing thing. So people have him in high regards. Suddenly, he's helping people and a viper bites him. And Emmanuel describes that the people of the land, the natives, they thought, oh, he must be a bad person. Otherwise, he wouldn't have received this viper's bite. And they die in a few hours. People ran away from him. Nothing happened to him. And then he became, it's the people, right? They think of you in high regard, and then later they think of you in a different way. And it's so interesting because Paul of Tarsus is going to tell, uh, it's page 613, when he says to people in his life, saying that people shouldn't, don't worry, the opinions of the common folk are very inconstant. I have my own experience in this regard. Let's attend to our duties, because ignorance is always ready to shift curse into praise and praise into curse. It's quite possible that in a few hours they will consider me a god. And that's how it's going to be. The same happened to Chico Xavier. The same happened to Jesus. And it's going to happen to you. You're going to help others. People are going to think you're amazing. And then some problem happen, they're going to think you're, who are you? For example, we had the pandemic, right? 100 years prior, 1918, we had the Spanish flu. Professor Ibn Barçanufo, this amazing medium, spiritist, educator, politician in Brazil, he died in the Spanish flu after saving so many people. How is that possible? It is possible because none of us can be greater than the Master. None of us. If Master Jesus died, none of us are going to be saved. Not because we're bad people, but because this is the course of life. We are born, and then one day we go back to the spiritual realm. Next chapter, we're going to talk about our preparation for death. In this chapter, we have a lesson. And at some point, when they achieve the city of Rome, the city of the seven hills, as they used to say, because it's surrounded by seven hills, he is no longer Julius' prisoner, let's say this way. Julius is a friend, and he says, I just wish I were like you, a prisoner of Christ. This is a statement by Julius the centurion, who became a friend, who turned his life around because of Jesus. And we are at a time when Nero is the emperor. And we all know Nero is a madman. He was a madman. And it's funny to say that in the totality of the Roman Empire, Christians didn't matter much, but they were often used to be the scapegoat of any problem. That's how it was. And Paul of Tarsus says that no matter what happens, we will receive the marks of the cross. And no matter the fact that he is imprisoned in Rome, he is still hopeful. Another lesson for us. When you keep doing everything right and life still give you lemons, what do? Lemonade? Or you make a sour face? Or you become depressed? Paul of Tarsus is relentless in the good. He keeps on being hopeful and optimistic. You and I already know that science shows to us that optimism is key for mental health. Key. So you and I are invited to boost our optimism, our faith, our hope, our courage. And he said, well, if I have to be a prisoner until they talk to me and set me free, then I'll be a prisoner. And what does he do? He spends the whole time teaching his cellmates, that's the other prisoners, and the guards and people. Even the guards would dispute, compete to be in charge of him, to learn. They would keep bringing family members to be healed, to learn, until one day. Until one day, Cassius Domitius, a very high level Roman, comes. He was blind. They bring him to prison to see Paul of Tarsus. He's this celebrity in healing, in the healing of the soul, in the healing of the body, in spreading joy. Cassius Domingos gets healed. And he says, now I'm going to help you. And he conquers the hearts of everybody till he's going to be set free. But before he does, we have a major lesson for us, a major teaching that we can't lose sight. In my book, it's page 625. When he says, Paul of Tarsus says to Luke, who is there with him, there are two classes of individuals for whom the renewing contact with Jesus is most difficult. The first one I saw in Athens, and it is comprised of individuals poisoned by the world's erroneous knowledge. Those who are crystallized in an imaginary superiority and who think much of themselves. In my opinion, these are the most unfortunate. The second is comprised of the recalcitrant Jews, who, possessing a precious legacy from the past, do not understand faith without religious battles, are hardened in the pride of the Jewish race, and persevere in an erroneous interpretation of God. Who are we in that? Are we resisting the call of the Christ because of our erroneous knowledge of life. The other day, I was at a restaurant, and sitting next to us was a man from another country, and he started telling us that he doesn't believe in God. I couldn't believe my eyes. I thought he was kidding. So I said, "Are you kidding?" He said, "No, I'm not. I used to believe in God, but I no longer do." And he started telling us why. And I said, "The Big Bang is a theory. And I understand that it's possible to put both together. We were created by God and we evolve. So the Big Bang is a part of it. We were not created as we are. We were created and then we evolved. The Big Bang is part of it. Go to the book On the Way to the Light and you're going to see it. It's the book that unites creationism with evolutionism. We spiritists are not conflicted about it at all. We finally have grounds to put the pieces of the puzzle together. God created us, but He didn't create us as we are now. Created us in ways in which we were the spiritual principle and the material principle. Throughout evolution, we became what we are. So evolution exists, creation exists. For people who have a hard time putting those two together, they have a hard time dealing with Jesus too. I know many people who say, like Athenians said to Paul of Tarsus, that they're so rational that they don't believe anything. Actually, if they were rational, if they were really using their reasoning, they not only would believe, but they would know of it. And there is another category of people who have a hard time with Jesus. Yes, and he says it here. The second type of the recalcitrant Jews who have a legacy and to date, still investing on battles and a misconception of God. You think God wants us to kill others? Hasn't Moses said to us that we shall not kill? Today we're going to stop here because when Paul of Tarsus is released from prison in Rome, you think he's going to party? No. He keeps himself faithful and focused. By the way, talking about focus, which is one of the main characteristics of our dear Paul of Tarsus, we have a new book released by Daniel Goleman, the author of the book Emotional Intelligence, that talks about focus as the driving force of excellence. And he's so right. Paul of Tarsus is so focused that he became excellent. Exercise for you and I. Are you also focused on the good? Are we focused on the good, dear friends? We're going to stop here as we are now going to see Paul of Tarsus using his freedom to do even more. He is almost 60 years old at that time, and yet full of energy to disseminate the teachings of the Christ, to share his love for people wherever he goes. Thank you, friends, for watching us in this inner journey with Paul and Stephen. If you have any question, write to us at cardiacradio@gmail.com. And we wish you many blessings as we go forward learning about Paul and Stephen.